I grew up going to church every Sunday. I went to a really formal church. Everyone was always wearing suits. It was very nice, but it was only a Sunday thing. So everyone we saw at church, we saw them on Sunday. We didn't see them throughout the week. My personal view of God as a kid and a child was that God was this distant figure. I believed He created everything. I believed He created the earth. I saw everything around and said it was too complex, too big to be something that happened by accident. But my experience of going to church and faith was, I believe there was this God that was far away, distant, not involved in my everyday life. I'd heard about Jesus, but my understanding of that was really, Jesus came down, He died, He paid for my sins, and then He went back up to heaven and kind of sat and watched. So that was my view of God as a young child, and then into my teen years. I was always an athlete. I've always been, on top of that, a people pleaser, so I was searching for the acclaim of man, the value that came from being good at a sport and being well liked. So that's kind of where I sought my satisfaction, which is a real up and down journey. I was fortunate enough to be really successful in sports. So again, that was an avenue that I put a ton of time into, and that, through that experience kind of became an idol. But when I got to high school, my family continued going to church. We just switched churches. It was a new church. It was a little different, but it was a very similar experience from my family's perspective. We would go on Sunday and wouldn't really talk about it throughout the week. It really didn't change how we lived, but it felt good that we went. And around this time, I had a friend who I played soccer with, and he was a couple years older than me, a guy I really admired. And his family also went to this church and were involved. So he invited me over to watch a football game. And the catch was, if I was going to come watch a football game, I had to come before and go to a Bible study. So when I showed up there, I had sat through Bible studies before. I had gone to Young Life. I had no problem sitting through. I kind of knew the biblical answers. I knew the right things to say. So it wasn't an uncomfortable situation for me. So I went into this Bible study with guys that were my own age. I was 16 at the time, and something was different. These guys they spoke and acted as if Jesus was a personal friend of theirs, and what the Bible said actually changed the way they thought about life and the way they lived their life. And all of a sudden I was kind of overwhelmed by this feeling of whatever they have in the way that they understand things, I want to know more. There's not many times when I can think of a prompting that strong God has had on my heart, but all I felt was, hey, whatever this is, whatever they have, I need to know more. This is very different from the God that I had experienced as a child and what I had seen in the church. So I immediately afterwards went up to the leader and said, hey, I need to know more. Who is this God? Like, where do I start? And that's kind of where God just gripped my heart. And over the next several months, journeying for the first time on my own, reading through the Bible and seeing how personal Jesus was. And through this time and in this study and being surrounded by this group of guys that love the Lord, I started to understand that this was not a thing that I just had to believe to be saved from punishment. This was something that was a personal relationship with the God of the universe. And I remember clearly understanding for the first time that Jesus didn't come down to die for all sins. He did, but He also came to die for my sins, me personally, because he loved me as well. And that completely changed the trajectory of my life and my eternity. And so at that time, I realized that I needed to submit to Christ. And as I submitted to Christ and finally understood and walked and stepped into this personal relationship with him, I began to see changes in myself, in the way I walked, in the way I interacted with people. Being an athlete and a people pleaser, I always tended to hang around a certain group of kids at school. I would only hang out with the kids that would make me look good or who were popular or cool, and that desire just went away from me. I started to walk in a way of loving everyone I came into contact with. That was my priority, not necessarily having the acclaim of people. And throughout this time, soccer had continued to be a big idol for me. It was a big part of my identity. And walking with God, learning that my worth came from him and not my success in athletics, dramatically changed the way I approached how I played soccer, the way I interacted with my teammates, and where I got my value. So after this time, and that's kind of where God moved my heart. And I guess throughout my relationship with him through college and afterwards, I would say the biggest thing that changed in me and my heart is church and Christianity and my faith no longer was about following these rules or doing these things for this distant God to please him, but walking hand in hand with this God who intimately is a part of my life.